What's up, hotties? Welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. I'm Bladen Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Sponhour and Theo Ash. We have a great episode planned for you all today. A big episode. There's a lot to talk about. Trevor Penning got kicked out of practice. Tim Patrick tore his ACL. The Miami Dolphins lost their first-round draft pick for tampering. What else happened? Deshaun Watson got suspended. And we have to predict the AFC North. So it's a big episode. But before we get into all of that, Matt, Theo, how are you guys doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. You were awfully rude to me about my coleslaw take on the timeline.
You're just mad because I ratioed you. You're just mad because
I didn't say anything back because I'm not an instigator and I don't want to start a conflict. But coleslaw is perfectly fine. It really is. I don't understand why it gets so much hate. I go to Cane's.
It's not good.
I go to Cane's. I consider getting extra coleslaw before extra toast. I'm dead serious. You know, if you don't like coleslaw, you're a bad guy. Grow up.
The only situation where I can constitute coleslaw is on like a pulled pork sandwich. That's it.
Is that the only situation where you can constitute
a spicy pulled pork sandwich, because the coleslaw like neutralizes that. So it's like a hot. This isn't chemistry, man. Scenario.
Coleslaw is just not so bad.
No, it is that bad.
It's not at all.
Sorry.
There's bad.
It's not that bad, but. It's not that bad. This is AP football's legacy. Is he's got everybody like coleslaw has been such a. I had never thought about coleslaw in my life before, like joining, like TikTok and knowing the AP football account and his constant.
AP football will always be considered light to me.
Light, light. God bless him. But I've heard so much about coleslaw because of him. It's very funny. I have no opinion. It's not great. It's not terrible. It's just like a side, and I'll eat it if I'm hungry. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Oh, man. Nah, coleslaw is very mid. How are you doing, Theo?
I'm good. I just made my top 100 NFL players list, which, you know, can never. I thought I was foolish. I was like, this is a pretty good list. I think
it doesn't matter how good your list is,
but it's
you know.
As like, okay, yeah, no, everybody hates it.
It's not even that everybody hates it. It's that people are only going to reply to it if they disagree with something. So I'm sure, like, I thought it was a pretty good list. There was nothing like horribly egregious on there, but the only reply you're ever going to get to something like that is like, why do you have?
No, you thought there was. You thought there was one thing horribly egregious.
I did. Outside of that, but I'd want one horribly egregious thing, and a 100 player list, not so bad.
And that horribly egregious thing that you think is there is that the greatest kicker of all time is one of the best NFL players. That is what you disagree with. Yep. I even added Butker on there, who is like second most accurate. He's like, because you're like, well, if you
on there too,
Butker's like number 80 or something, and you're like, well, if you're gonna put one kicker on there, you have to put others. So I was like, fair enough, I'll put Butker, who is like also been incredible, on the list as well. And I thought about putting Boswell on there too, but I didn't, and McPherson.
Well, this is my problem with it. It's not that Tucker's at 5; it's that Tucker at 5 is like, see, I don't care about positional value even for special teams. But then like no other special teamer gets anywhere close to the list outside of Butker, who is there for the sake of having another kicker to justify Tucker at 5.
I think you're right. I think you're right that there needs to be other special teams players, but I don't think any punters have been like special for long enough to constitute a spot, like even in a vacuum.
See, but then if
maybe the Seattle guy,
like Kyle Pitts has been in the league 1 year, he's 30, right? So you don't need to go like, if you need to be like amazing, like all time goat at a position for multiple years to even crack the list, that is discounting them because of their positional value.
Well, I'm not discounting a punter because of his positional value, but like, how many punters are you just like Kyle Pitts changes the way defenses have to game play. Like no one's game planning for a punter.
Positional value then.
But like you have to game plan for Justin Tucker.
No, you do not.
You don't.
What?
I think you do a little bit. I mean, maybe not game plan for him, but I think it certainly influences how you play the Ravens, knowing that they've got Justin Tucker and like what you're willing to give them in terms of field position when you know they've got Justin Tucker a little bit. But anyway,
Like-
what I'm saying is I just don't like who is the best puncher this year? It's probably like AJ Cole.
AJ Cole.
Like to me, he's just not as good of a football player as Kyle Pitts. Is Justin
That's how I
Tucker
feel about,
as good of a
that's how
player?
I feel about Kyle Pitts and Justin Tucker.
I feel like Justin Tucker is a better
Yeah,
football
no,
player than Kyle Pitts.
I disagree.
I think the
Yeah,
logic,
I agree.
like Justin Tucker greater than Kyle Pitts greater than AJ Cole. I don't think that that's like a huge stretch of logic. Okay?
My problem is not Tucker being ranked high. He's awesome. My problem is I feel like it's inconsistent awareness of positional value.
If you can find me a long snapper that is as good as Justin Tucker, like I'm
sure there's a long
put him on
snapper
my
out
top
there who's
100.
never like messed up a snap for 20 years or
Maybe.
whatever. And it
Find me
changes the way
PFF
you game
grade.
plan around their long snapping, frankly.
Find me the PFF grade of the best long snapper of all time.
I don't know, but all I know is that Justin Tucker is phenomenally
I think he should just be kicker taxed. That's all I'm going to say. The fifth best player in the league. Come on.
He is though. If like he wasn't a kicker,
Yes.
yes, he is. But
disagree.
at any rate, people were mad that Ed Oliver was on there at all, even though he was like top 10 in every single, efficiency metric for a defensive tackle.
Where'd you put him?
I put him at 99. I had him just on the list.
Like, okay. It's like, why are you getting mad at 99? Like,
Right. Well, people thought Quinnen Williams was better, which I guess is fair, and Christian Wilkins, which I guess is fair. But I mean, Ed Oliver being, kind of the best player on that front seven on a defense that was the best defense in football, top 10 in pass rush win rate, run block win rate, pressure rate for a defensive tackle, and run tackles for loss. Like, that's a pretty good resume that I don't think you could say for literally any other defensive tackle in the league. So people were mad at that. Some people get mad at the most obvious things, which is hilarious. Like they'll be like, what do you mean you have, Kevin Byard at 48? It's like, how do you think that's ridiculous, man? like that's
did they
not
think he
that
was
bad.
too high or too low?
Right. Sometimes I'll say like, how do you have this person here? And I like literally don't know if they're mad at him being too high or too low.
I'm like, it's like,
What do you mean Kenny
Clark?
Clark? What do you mean Kenny Clark is 51? Like, what are you mad at there? It seems like a pretty good spot for him, but I don't know. It's a fun exercise. I always enjoy it.
Where was Jerry Tillery, man?
Tillery was right before Penning on my list of the top NFL players.
That's the matchup I want to see. But speaking of
Eat it.
Trevor Penning, dude got kicked out of practice today for fighting 3 days in a row.
3 consecutive days. Theo, this is your big thing. I agree very much, but this is your big thing.
Well, that's why I had such a low grade on him, is like, I just don't want to fucking deal with him being annoying all the time. Right. Like,
Yeah.
he's like at the Senior Bowl, he was just like putting guys' heads into the ground and throwing linemen into Desmond Ritter's knees. And just like, I looked at his stats and he's like led the FCS in penalties. And I'm like, this guy just seems like a jerk. He seems like just
He's just nasty, man. He's just nasty.
And then people will like dick ride his like literal bullying, and they'll be like, this is exactly what I want to see. It's like, okay, pancaking someone is good, right? I understand. In the play, pancaking someone who has stopped trying after the whistle blows is just being a loser.
Embarrassing, dude. It's so
embarrassing.
honestly.
It's cringe to watch. It's like this guy is going try hard mode and like taking his like. It's literally like a cartoon bully. Like he seems like he would be like the bad guy in an Adam Sandler football movie that's like comically rough. He's like in The Longest Yard and like just being like a over the top nasty criminal. Like what are you doing, dude?
Dude has to be like dude has to be tamed.
Right. The guy just has to be the toughest dude out there. And it's like, Teron Armstead doesn't do this. Tyron Smith doesn't do this. David Bakhtiari doesn't do this. Trent Williams doesn't do this. No one who is actually good does this shit. Even like people will be like Richie Incognito, who's a horrible person and also a bully. But in practice, I never saw like him getting in fights quite literally every single day. Like even like Richie Incognito's like, he's actually a horrible, like horrific person. And I don't know if Penning is like straight up like the miserable piece of shit that Incognito was, but he is like, that's what people compare him to. But Penning is just like, he's been a distraction. He's going to be a walking holding penalty. And it's just crazy to see how many people are like, this is, I want a team full of Trevor Pennings, is a comment I got on one of my videos last night. It's like, bro, you would go 0-17. I'm sorry. You cannot have a whole team of guys like that.
Saints 0-17 question mark?
They would if they had 53 Trevor Pennings. You wouldn't even be able to feel the practice. They'd all get mad at each other after one snap and it'd just be a big brawl.
No, but I agree. I think that fighting your teammates every single day probably gets old, and that won't make you a Hall of Famer, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to see how this goes in the regular season, because if he's leading the FCS in penalties, something tells me that's not going to get any better when he's playing in the NFL, and these guys are way, way bigger and faster and winning more.
Yeah.
I remember the nastiest player in last year's draft class was Tevin Jenkins. He was the dude who was, and it wasn't as bad as Penning, but he was the guy who was like pancaking, like throwing guys way out of bounds and like constantly going for the pancake and constantly kind of doing a little bit extra after the whistle. The only thing I remember from his rookie season was an idiotic, unsportsmanlike penalty in a key moment versus the Vikings, and now the Bears are shopping him. So, yeah. It's
like that physicality and like going out and playing like mean is good, but you got to be able to like rein it in and control it a little bit.
Exactly.
That mindset itself doesn't, like, anybody could go out there and just go push everybody around no matter what's happening and try to just like be mad all the time. But like Quentin Nelson maybe gets kind of a reputation of that, doing that type of stuff, but he's not out there going and like doing this horrible stuff in practice. He's reining it into like when the play is actually happening. You got to be a little bit more controlled than that.
Right. People were calling me soft. It's like, it's not soft. It's just don't be a dick, right? There's a difference.
All I'm saying is the Saints play the Browns, they play the Steelers, they play the Raiders, they play the Rams, and they play team. They play one other team.
That kind of is the murderer's row of.
Well, not off the bat though. It's all later. I'm mad. I'm mad because right off the bat they get a pretty easy run of things. I want Penning game 1 to see Myles Garrett, but instead they play like the Falcons right away, and he's gonna get like Lorenzo Carter or something. It's like I can't wait that long. I actually thought their pass rush like schedule is pretty easy to start the year and then gets a little.
Well, I mean they do play Tampa. They do have Tampa.
Yeah,
he's going to get Brian Burns week 3. Dude, you get the Vikings week 4.
If there is a player that Penning is going to accidentally, injure, it will be Brian Burns. Brian Burns coming off the edge against him. Brian Burns is like 250. That legitimately makes me nervous to play Penning twice a year. But.
Hey, I guess then he's operating as intended.
Oh, and the 49ers. They also play the 49ers.
Yeah.
Like they have the most brutal stretch of edge rushers, but it's like in the back half of the season.
But we'll see. Maybe he'll rein it in some before the regular season. It's just not a great look 3 practices in a row. No,
really not. Now, I don't want to make Stay Hot a sad podcast, but we do have to talk about Tim Patrick tearing his ACL. Truly heartbreaking.
It sucks. He was poised for a good year. And it's
I think he's a great receiver, like just straight up, just really, really good. And it's going to pose some questions for Denver's offense, because that was definitely a guy. I mean, we talked about it on our live stream about how like Russell Wilson is going to want to have these deep threat style receivers, and he's still going to have Cortland, but losing Tim Patrick's going to hurt a pretty decent amount. So
yeah, absolutely. And I was actually more excited about Tim Patrick than Jerry Jeudy this season. I thought, like, when you think about Russell Wilson's game and you think of like where he targets, obviously you think of the the moon ball, the go route. You think of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett up the sidelines. And to me, you got Jerry Jeudy in the slot, and then you had Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton kind of as those two players. And I was excited for Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick. I really thought that their games meshed well with Russ. So now that Tim Patrick is out, I would assume that means you're putting KJ Hamler in the slot, and Judy's going to bounce outside on most of these, 3 wide receiver sets, 11 personnel. And then that's a lot of stress on Jeudy, because I think like the slot was a good fit for him. I do think that he has some problems kind of tracking the ball over his shoulder, which really popped up his rookie year when he led the league in drops, and the slot was kind of a better spot for him because he's got a lot of foot quickness and all that. Right. So he's going to have to kind of play a little bit more outside of his comfort zone, or KJ Hamler or someone else will have to play outside of their comfort zone. So I think that it shuffles a lot of things around, and it just puts more stress on Jerry Jeudy to be the player that they drafted him to be. And, maybe that breakout year will happen for him, or that's where my mind goes immediately, is like, what are they going to do with Jeudy now? Where is he going to play the primary amount of the time? Because you can't do exactly like you did last year now.
I think it puts the Broncos in a position where it's like they lost Fant. Now they've lost Tim Patrick. Anything else happens, anyone goes down during the season, and you're really down to it. And it's, we were talking a little bit earlier too about how, like, what are their other options? Like, is Odell a possibility for Denver? Julio just signed, so that's not a thing anymore. I'm not sure if there's really a good replacement out there to go grab before the season.
Maybe Will Fuller.
Will Fuller wouldn't be terrible. I mean, I know that's not really the fit that we're talking about for Wilson, but if you can get more wide receiver depth, even if it isn't going to be like a perfect mesh, you probably should do it.
Fuller's a pretty good deep threat.
Yeah.
Fuller can...
Yeah, of course. Then if we're talking about not wanting to be injury prone at wide receiver, Will Fuller would not be the best pickup.
Probably not.
Trade for Lockett if the Seahawks really suck.
That's not a terrible idea.
No, I've pitched that idea before already. I think like the Seahawks should trade Tyler Lockett. Like, I think that's like a legitimate thing they should be considering. And if Denver's going to make an offer for him, like.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the asking price would be, or if that ship has sailed, but I know that was a possibility this offseason. And like, if you think you can be a contender with him, and I think the Broncos could be a contender with him, I mean, they would instantly get very, very, they would get even scarier than they would be if Tim Patrick was healthy. Right. So I don't know. I think that's something to maybe keep in mind, is that he was maybe sort of kind of available this offseason, and it would definitely be on my radar if I was the Broncos front office. That's all I'll say about it. So we'll see.
Did you guys just see? I just got a notification, and I don't know if we want to touch on it real quick. Marquise Brown got arrested.
Yeah, for speeding.
Something about the I-10, man, in Phoenix, because Zaven Collins got arrested last year for pulling like 120 miles an hour on a Phoenix highway. Look, I saw it. Look, the I-10, it's not super busy. It's not like Phoenix is not like LA. It's a little bit more open, and it can be easy to speed on those Phoenix highways. These Arizona guys got to calm down a little bit, though. I don't know. He'll be back, though.
Criminal speeding, I saw this before we started recording, is exceeding 85 miles per hour, exceeding the posted speed limit by 20, or exceeding 35 in a school zone. It's obviously not great, but if this means that he was doing like 90 on the highway,
come on.
Don't do that, dude.
Well, what are normal speed limits in Phoenix?
Like 60, 70.
I mean, same thing they are everywhere. He was probably going like 90, 100 miles an hour. I've seen it before. I mean, every city can relate. I don't think it's a big deal. I mean, obviously he's dumb for doing it, and your head probably goes immediately to like Henry Ruggs. So like, don't speed. But it's a non-story. I don't think we have to spend too much time on it, or Tim Patrick. Honestly, I'm curious on where Jerry Jeudy's going to line up for them, and exactly like what KJ Hamler can do, because we're going to see a lot of him now.
Right. There's two storylines that I do think we will probably end up spending a decent amount of time on. Miami losing, tampering to try and get Tom Brady and Sean Payton, got neither of them. And now they're paying the price of a first-round pick and a 2024 third-round pick.
Good.
And then I saw a stat, I think it was The Athletic that posted it, that Tom Brady has been involved every time a team has had to forfeit a first-round pick. I thought that was pretty funny.
Tom, man. I don't know what to tell you.
Tom. Not my goat, man.
This is a unbelievable pattern. I don't know, man. I mean, like, I haven't fully read through everything, so stop me if I'm being ignorant, but it sounds like the Dolphins owner was being pretty dumb. And I mostly, like, I feel bad for Dolphins fans because it sucks when you lose a first-round draft pick and it makes the draft a lot less exciting. But I feel mostly bad for Brian Flores having to deal with that crap and getting fired from there and all that.
And
I mean,
that was the other...
Sounds like a very poorly run team. And what would make me feel bad about it if I was a Miami fan isn't necessarily even the first and the third. It's that it's really hard to win a Super Bowl when your owner is a dummy. And this is something that a dummy would do. And it does not bode well for good decision making in the future.
Brian Flores was right, is my whole
he
thing.
Was on the
like
money.
Brian Flores, everything he said was like true. I think there was like at one point, I can't find the exact tweet, but as far as the like, I'll pay you $100,000 to lose lose a game. Mm-hmm. They were like, that didn't even get punished here. They essentially said like, oh, he was just.
I think that was no. I think that was
dude. It was satire. It was ironic.
I thought it was in the punishment, though. I thought it was in the punishment.
No, they found it.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
They found that he was kidding. They were like, yeah, he wasn't serious about that. But like, still, like Flores literally was. Imagine being him. Your owner is making jokes about making jokes for those listening. I'm doing the air quotes.
Yeah,
like he's actively trying to like. I don't know. Like if you go back and read that whole Brian Flores report about like what he was saying, like I'm happy with the team we have. I don't want to help you tamper for Tom Brady because you could get a first round pick taken away. And then like showing up to Stephen Ross's boat and like Tom Brady is there and like tricking him into meeting with Tom Brady and all that. Like I just feel for Brian Flores. And then like everything that happened to him post where like he was interviewing for jobs that he had known were already filled. Like it just got a really raw deal, man, for someone who had the Dolphins defense, like kind of balling last year, first in pressure rate, turned around a 1-7 team to like damn near making the playoffs. Like that guy is a good coach. And I'm not saying like Mike McDaniels is like a horrible coach, but there's a pretty real chance they just straight up downgraded at head coach this season because Brian Flores like wouldn't let them tamper. And that's just messed up. And now they've lost a hopefully franchise cornerstone, right, in a first round pick. So here's
the thing.
Stupid.
I keep leaning in this direction of like, where like we're gonna get into the AFC North pretty soon, but I look at the Steelers with Brian Flores on staff, and I'm like, dog. It
doesn't make you feel great. No, if you're a Browns fan.
This is what I'm saying. Like the rest of the AFC North, like the Steelers are already always good. Like Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. You bring in another really good coach. That defense kind of underperformed last year. Like, bro, I'm a little scared. I can't lie.
It's hard to know how much influence Flores will have on the defense itself. I don't know what his exact position is on the staff. He's not just straight up defensive coordinator, is he?
No, he's not. I think he's like defensive assistant.
He's like the linebackers coach or something like that.
Okay. Well, if they were first in pressure rate with Emmanuel Ogbah last year, then with TJ Watt, you could expect pretty good results as well.
You probably could.
But I think Flores will be a head coach here relatively soon if everything is righteous and right in the NFL, which it often is not, but he should be.
No, he deserves to be. The other big piece of news before we get into predicting the AFC North, and this also relates to the AFC North, Deshaun Watson is suspended for 6 games. And I think we can all agree that that's too little.
Yeah, I'm still holding out for it to be more. I know that the NFL might appeal I don't really understand 100% the process on how that appeal works and all of that. So I don't want to speak on it too heavily, but yeah, 6 games is really, really light. It's not a real punishment.
No.
Well, the Players Association is we'll see. We'll see.
That's the thing is the NFL is going to try and appeal for more, and the Players Association is going to try and combat that as hard as they can. So, like at the end of the day, it's probably going to stay 6. I could see it going up to 8. I could see it going down to 4, but I don't think it changes all that drastically.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting just because like the actual decision that the judge like kind of recommended was basically saying that Watson did it, right? She was like, this is horrible. This is like, he needs to be banned from any like massage. Like, she was like, do not let him go to any more massages.
Yeah, and she was like, this is the most egregious act we've seen.
They're like, this is a bigger punishment than the NFL has ever seen, but it's also a worse crime than the NFL has ever seen. Like, that's what she said in her conclusion. And I'm like, yes. And then she's like, well, so we'll give him 6 games. And it's like, what?
You were so close to getting it.
Which just kind of speaks to like how little the NFL has punished this before. But didn't Ezekiel Elliott get suspended for 6 games? I believe it was that amount. And he like
6 or 4. I can't say I remember.
Zeke's I think Zeke's was weird because there was like he was suspended for X number of games, but they could like pick and choose which games he was suspended for. Was that really? Zeke or was that someone else?
I can't remember. I would remember that. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just don't remember that at all.
Zeke did get a 6-game suspension.
Wow.
He did.
And then Ben Roethlisberger was 6. They got appealed to 4.
Yes.
Jeez.
It's
insane. I mean, it's.
Even Robert Kraft is saying that this is too little.
Robert Kraft, bro.
That's bold. That's bold coming from you, Robert.
Robert, they just suspended another owner. I wouldn't be.
Yeah, Robert, I seem to remember you at a. Yeah, it's bad, and people are drawing conclusions to the Calvin Ridley thing, and like, what Calvin Ridley did was like not even close to as bad as what Watson did. And I do get it, like the 0 tolerance policy for gambling, because like the day it would come out that a quarterback like gambled on a wide receiver to get like yards or something like that would like bring down the league. Like it would put everything into question. So I kind of get having a 0 tolerance policy on that, even though what Ridley did, as he was not with the team, betting on them to win, like, and it was only $1,500. It's like maybe you could have used some nuance and not give it, but at the same time, I also get having a 0 tolerance policy for gambling.
No, like I get it.
We'll see.
But you should also have a 0 tolerance policy.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
For sexual assault. Like
exactly.
That's the caveat there.
Right. Exactly. And my question is, my thing is like Ridley. I mean, when that suspension came down, I was like, damn, but I kind of get it. This is not quite a 1-to-1 comparison, but yes, it should be worse. So it is. But I mean, he's coming back, I guess, after 6 games, maybe, or we'll see if the NFL appeals. But
I think we have enough information to at least make a general prediction for the Browns.
And that gets us into our AFC North predictions, doesn't it?
It does.
We're working under the assumption that he gets suspended for 6 games. And then if there's an appeal, then we'll just be wrong. But we got to make it a prediction at some point.
We have to, at some point. The Browns line is set at 8.5.
Well, that's tough. So they got to get to 9, and they've already got a penciled in L week 1.
Oh, so brother.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, have you seen Darnold? And I've seen so many videos of Darnold just missing guys.
I try to avoid him. I get the idea, I'm afraid.
What was it? The Jeremy Chin interception where it was just so far behind.
It's so funny because the Panthers account will tweet out another Jeremy Chin interception. It's like, who is throwing that ball, man? That's the bittersweet part about training camp, is that anything good that happens means somebody else did bad. Baker will be starting week 1 for sure, but that's beside the point of the Browns. Yeah, I think Cleveland is in an interesting spot. We were talking about earlier how their schedule through the first 6 games is pretty easy outside of the loss to the Panthers. And if they could be, like 3-3 through that, even 2-4, when they come, they're going to have, a great offensive line and, a great running game with Watson there. Yeah, it's going to be a very strong offense.
I think 2-4. I know it's kind of an easy stretch, but the Browns are notorious for losing that first game.
Yeah, they haven't won an opener since
04.
Yeah,
it's been a long time.
Which is an unbelievable stat, really. I mean, that's insane that they haven't. That's like a full season of losses in a row.
No, so I don't know if they necessarily will lose that one, or I think they could lose the game to the Jets even.
They're due.
But
don't say that,
bro. But yeah, I could see them losing either of the week 1 or 2 games. 2-4 through that 6-game stretch, I don't think is unreasonable. Brissett's kind of known for not having a very good deep ball. I worry about the Browns.
He's known for not having a very good a lot of things.
I worry about the Browns' ability to pass the ball, but great offensive line. Nick Chubb's phenomenal. Kareem, the run game will still be.
Here's
good.
My problem with them, dude. Their front 7 is not that good. Garrett's great
defensively. Yeah,
Garrett is great.
I worry about
Clowney, I still like pretty well, but I think they're. When's the last time they had good defensive tackles? I mean, we're looking at
Tavon. We're looking at Tavon Bryan. We're looking at Perion Winfrey. We're looking at who's the third guy? Who's their other tackle? Bladen.
We drafted.
They have that Ohio State guy. Right?
Didn't we draft Isaiah Thomas?
Yeah, but he's a 7th round pick. So
I mean, this is what I'm talking about. It's you got 3rd round rookies who are you need to start right away.
Jordan Elliott is their projected. Yes. Who is he? I do not know.
Is Jordan Elliott projected to start?
That's what our lad's depth chart says.
Oh, brother.
So that's my real problem with the Browns. Everybody knows what the offense is. Decent receivers. They're going to get a quarterback, great offensive line.
Well, Amari Cooper got hurt in practice.
If Cooper goes down, they're in trouble. I'm going to say that. I also think the receivers are pretty weak.
But apparently, David Bell has apparently looked good in practice. So I'm excited for that because I was a little bit worried about him. But if he's looking good, I'm excited.
Cooper's back also. He practiced today.
Oh, he did? Yeah. Okay. I know he was hurt yesterday. I didn't see what it was though. I get worried about the front 7. Valid. Interior defensive line is weak. Linebackers are shaky at best. It's a lot.
I think their front 7's weak. I like their secondary pretty well. But I think that their front 7's really tough. I think their linebackers are pretty mid. I think their interior defensive line is pretty weak. And I think their receivers are if Amari Cooper gets hurt, they're in humongous trouble. So I don't love them.
They're the Chargers of this year. That's just how I feel it. That's everything about the Chargers I thought last year. I also kind of think about the Browns this year, where it's they should have one of the more efficient offenses because they've got, even although the Chargers last year, I didn't even think Herbert would be as good as he was, but you had this offense where you've got the quarterback. The offensive line ended up being pretty good after the additions that they made. But what happens if Keenan Allen goes down and it's Mike Williams and Jalen Guyton? Is that going to be great? And on the defense, it's you've got Derwin James and Joey Bosa, but who else, right? Can you say that's a good front 7 or a good secondary? Now, I think you could say the Browns have a good secondary, and I think that's kind of what could make them get to the playoffs. And whereas the Chargers miss them, is you could say the secondary is much deeper than what the Chargers had last year. But I could definitely see them suffering kind of the same fate where, yes, they'll have a good quarterback for the majority of the season, but if they can't get,
are they so good to overcome a 2-4 start on a weak record? I don't know.
If they can't tread water to begin with, is their run defense going to be strong enough And they just have no room for error. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
they can't survive an Amari. They can't survive an Amari Cooper injury. They can't survive a Myles Garrett injury, even if Denzel Ward goes down, which
and
he does
Denzel
every
Ward is
single year.
incredibly injury prone.
Right.
But that's the benefit of having like the depth that the Browns do. Like Newsome was good last year. Right. In the secondary, Newsome was good last year. Greedy Williams took a big step, which was nice to see. So, I mean, we have pieces there that I do like. But no, you're pretty much right. The Browns might have to like come out of the bye week and be perfect.
I mean, I really think that like I'm looking at their depth chart right now. I mean, and I'm not even like incredibly high on JOK. I haven't, I thought he was solid last year. JOK. If JOK goes down, their linebackers are a disaster. If even if either of their edge rushers go down, their defensive line is a disaster.
If we lose any of Garrett, Clowney, or JOK, we have the worst front seven in football. Maybe, like, and
Amari Cooper goes down, you got the worst. Like, there's just a lot that can go wrong with this team.
No wiggle room. But at the same time, it's the most efficient running game in football.
True.
Adding a top 5 quarterback, so it's like damn. And
right.
They were the 7th ranked defense by pass DVOA last year, so they've got this crazy high ceiling, I think, but they've also got this crazy low floor. Like no one has the range of outcomes that they've got.
Yeah.
But
the Browns could be like 7-10 or like 11-6, and like
nothing would surprise me.
What's their under over again? 8.5.
8.5. I'm taking the over on 8.5, but I worry about if they make the playoffs.
I'm taking the over 2 just because I think their offense is going to be. I'm going to bet on Amari Cooper staying healthy, and I think their offense for the last 11 weeks of the season is going to be pretty crazy efficient. But I do know, and their defense was good enough last year where I think they won't quite be Chargers level bad this year. But like I said before, they have, if anything goes wrong, and maybe I should bet on something going wrong. It's probably smart to bet on something going wrong, especially when the NFL could appeal the Watson decision. But they need some luck this year. But if they can have luck, they can be a Super Bowl team. So
sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
I don't disagree that there's a wide range of outcomes, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was towards the higher end.
Breaking news. The NFL is appealing Deshaun Watson's 6-game suspension. This was tweeted 3 minutes ago.
So it's if there's a wide range of outcomes, both good and bad, and we're talking about will something go wrong, it's the Cleveland Browns. My dad is a Browns fan. I've grown up with around this my whole life. Something will go wrong. I can totally see the world where it's like, yeah, everyone stays healthy and Watson comes back and it's great and the offense is amazing. It just doesn't work like that. In my lifetime, I've never seen it happen. So, I mean, there's a lot of good teams in the AFC that I'm not saying like, Jesus, this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy can't go down. I don't hate, what they've done. I really think their roster is maybe still a year away from being right where it needs to be. And maybe one of the, Donovan Peoples-Jones or David Bell steps up as a receiver, or maybe one of the linebackers steps up. But I actually think I'm going to lean the under on this, especially if Watson is getting his case appealed. If he's out for like 10 games, 12 games, then it's over.
It's curtains for sure.
Well, if he's out longer, the under's good. Like the line's going to go down.
That's true.
But you could bet the line, I guess, even right now, the line probably changed after hearing that move. But if it's still 8.5, which it is right now, perhaps now the under is a better move.
I think there's a decent chance they win that appeal to some extent, dude. And here's the thing. If Amari Cooper goes down and it's Jacoby Brissett and like Donovan Peoples-Jones at the 1, I don't care how efficient the running game is. Like it's gonna, you'll be able to stack the box
thing is like,
so heavily.
It's an efficient run game, but like, if like even looking through those first few games, it's like the Jets have a good run defense. The Steelers are good up front.
Steelers were the worst run defense in football last year, man. We'll see.
Were they really the worst run defense in football? Oh yeah,
they were horrible.
With TJ Watt and Cam Hayward?
That's how bad Devin Bush was, yes.
He was a baller.
I didn't know they were the worst run defense in football.
Look at they averaged like 130 yards a game against them last year, and they're getting Tyson Alalu back. And
Cam
I guess
Hayward's
Cameron Hayward has played forever, man,
and he's amazing.
That guy's a goat.
Isaiah Loudermilk is so bad, dude, and Devin Bush is so bad, and they were starting large swaths of last season.
But who's in the building now? Brian Flores. He'll fix it.
Yeah, I mean, it will probably be better than it was last year. I'm just saying. And the Jets were also maybe the second worst run defense in football. So I don't know where you're. Those are like two of the worst run defenses last year.
Don't the Jets?
Jermaine Johnson, baby.
And they lost their best run defender, which was Falasu of whatever his name is.
The Jets did lose.
Maybe they can win some of those games. I just think that if you've got to be able to move the ball a little bit through the air. Even with an efficient run game. So we'll see. I'm not betting on things working out perfectly for the Browns.
Probably.
Sorry, Browns fans.
You're right.
I'm sorry. Right. I hate to do it, but
you're not wrong. Breaks my heart. Listen, I will say this about the Browns before we move on to the Steelers. If the Cleveland Browns throughout this whole, I made a TikTok about this. If we don't get a goddamn Super Bowl out of this mess, we have Watson for 5 years? We don't get a goddamn Super Bowl within the next 5 years? I am rioting in the streets of Cleveland. Anyone is welcome to join me. All right, it'll be 2027. If there is not a Lombardi Trophy in the city of Cleveland, we are marching, and we are rioting in the city of Cleveland.
Bladen, you deserve better as a fan. I hope you know. You really do. You've never been anything but loyal and optimistic to the Browns, and they've never once repaid you except for 1 year when they got that one playoff game against the Steelers.
That's probably the highlight.
They've had one cool season your entire life.
I think that's the highlight of my life is when the Browns beat the Steelers in the playoffs.
It's the best thing to ever happen to me. Okay.
So, but moving on to the Steelers. Moving on to the Steelers. Their line's at 7.5, which
I'm probably going over here.
Right? I understand it being low. It's okay, who's starting at quarterback week 1? If it's Trubisky,
it's going to be Mitch Trubisky. He's gotten all the first team reps in training camp. Pickett has looked bad. Okay. It's going to be Trubisky behind a bad offensive line, and their secondary.
Do you think Pickett plays at any point this year?
I think he'll play at this point because Mitch Trubisky is garbage. Steelers fans are climbing my list of most delusional fan bases for just how they hyped up Mitch Trubisky. They're like, bro, he's changed, bro. He's good, bro. What? He threw 11 passes last year, and one of them was a horrible interception. It's where is this narrative coming from? What body of work has he put forward to make you think he's a changed man? He's the same guy.
It's the Adam Gase conundrum. Bad quarterback gets drafted to a team with a bad coach, and now the bad coach is getting all the blame. It's but maybe it actually isn't the quarterback at all, but odds are, you can be good with a bad coach and your team as a quarterback. That happened with Darnold, and I think that's what's happening with Trubisky. And I think Trubisky can be the 32nd best quarterback in the league. I think he can be, is he a borderline starter? Yeah, he is. He's the type of guy you bring in when you're bringing in a rookie. You'd be like, this is our bridge guy, and then he gets benched by week 5, right? Okay, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, let's look at the first 5 games then. Are they beating the Bengals?
No, they're not. They're gonna stink, dude. I'm sorry, Tomlin. All the Steelers fans are gonna think that Tomlin is a phenomenal coach, but you have built the 20 Bears. Congratulations. I do not think that is.
This team is better than the Bears. Come on.
Is it? Is it better? They've got a bad offensive line. They've got maybe the worst They've got the worst quarterback situation in football.
They have better receivers. They have TJ Watt.
I guess the 2020 Bears went 8-8, so maybe that's okay. But still, they're not. I
really do like their receivers. They got a lot of receivers.
Yeah, Deontay's good. Claypool, Pat Freiermuth, I like a lot at tight end. Najee Harris is good. They have guys. There are some teams where they don't have guys.
If they had a more reasonable, if you think the offensive line can be average, then I can totally see where you would like the team. I'll say that, or the offense at least.
I feel like the offensive line is kind of the biggest crutch right now.
It's look, they've got the worst quarterback situation in football and a bad offensive line in an AFC that is famously pretty loaded. They might deal with 3 other playoff teams in their own division. I'm sorry, Steelers fans. I just do not see it. Last year, they snuck into the playoffs despite their horrible quarterback play and offensive line play and a horrible run defense. I don't know how they fucking did it, but they did. And maybe you're just going to bet on them just like pulling something out of their ass every single year. But I just don't think it works like that. I think like last year, the AFC was just like weirdly horrible. I don't think that's going to be the case this year.
The Ravens were disastrous.
The Ravens were a disaster. Like the Titans were like one of the worst one seeds of all time last year. So look, I just do not think this year is going to go down like last year when it comes to like making the playoffs in the AFC. I don't think you can be a disaster in multiple facets of your team to make the playoffs here. I mean, we're talking about a league where, Russell Wilson might miss it on the Broncos, which is a pretty good roster. A team that has multiple there's going to be some team with multiple top 100 players that misses. Like the Steelers, that quarterback situation is not carrying them in this conference. I'm sorry. They can get second if Deshaun Watson gets a larger. They can get third if Deshaun Watson gets suspended for a long period of time, I think. But like, I just do not think that this team is on the same tier as the Bengals and Ravens.
They got some tough games on here, man.
They have
Cincinnati, New England,
games.
Cleveland, New York, Jets, Buffalo, Tampa is a pretty tough start. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I legit think they might only win one of those games.
They're a well-coached team. Tomlin is a great coach. That is the one thing they've got going for them pretty seriously. And I'll stand by. What are they exactly going to try to do with Trubisky? Because I know there were times where if the offense was a little bit easier on him, asking him to do less, he did look serviceable. So if you can get that and the offensive line can pull its own weight even a little bit, I could see how you could not hate the offense.
The one I will say, like, the quarterback situation was bad last year with Ben, but with Ben, I think at least mentally, he's like still so many levels above Trubisky that it's like, I don't know.
I wouldn't say so many. Ben was pretty terrible last year.
Ben was terrible, but like Ben still can get the ball out quickly. Trubisky will hold on to the ball. That's what I'm more worried about.
They're both horrible in their
Trubisky.
own
I feel like
way.
Trubisky's going to take more sacks. Like their offense is gonna. I don't know. I'm worried just about the Steelers in a lot of ways offensively, but I also do like their receivers and I like their running backs. Or I like Najee and I like Minka and TJ Watt and
they've got some players. I don't think they're quite. I think I can see 7 wins. I agree that
I'm leaning on 7.
I agree that if it wasn't for the Mike Tomlin never losing season line, it's probably pretty clear, but I do think that they're a well-coached team. I don't think the roster is that far off. I do still look at the offense and say they've got some nice skill position players. They still have, TJ Watt, who's really nice, Cameron Jordan, Minka Fitzpatrick. Like, they've got some guys who can play.
Yeah. The Bears, they're like the 2020 Bears, like pretty good defense. Maybe I don't think it's going to be quite as good as like the 2018 Bears when they had kind of a bad offense, but the best defense in the league. I don't think the Steelers are going to be quite that. But they like those 2020 Bears teams with Trubisky, I mean, were maybe not as even well coached as this and hung around 8-8. So there's some reason for hope there. But I just, in this conference, in this division, I just don't see them being like all that. I would say under. I don't think they're going to be all that good, but they've surprised before. I thought of that last year, and they were good. So
I'll agree, but
I every single year.
I'll agree.
I might find a way to distance. I think I'm just going to fuck around and give him 8 just because like I know better than to bet the under on Tomlin.
Fair enough.
So I'll give him 8 just and pick the over just so that Steelers fans don't get mad at me.
I'll take the under.
Fair enough.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Odds Trader. For play-by-play updates, live scores, and bet tracking, Odds Trader is the place to go. They have the best price on every game and sign-up offers from multiple sports books. Plus, they have player statistics, key game stats, and even projected game day weather. You can use their bet tracker to keep records of all your games and betting activity. OddsTrader.com is the #1 site for all your game day bets. To begin your handicapping journey, make sure to go to oddstrader.com/bluewire. That's oddstrader.com/bluewire. OddsTrader is the beginning of your best bets for all sports. Download from the App Store today. The two teams at the top of this division are the Ravens and the Bengals.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
What team do you think will prevail and
Ravens.
win this division?
Ravens.
Okay.
Bro, the Ravens almost made the playoffs last year despite like the most ridiculous slew of injuries. Like, how many running backs did they go through last year? Right? Lamar was pulling plays out of his ass. Like, I love
Lamar.
It was like Lamar and Mark Andrews just out there playing backyard football with each other. Like, there was nothing to be happy about in Baltimore.
But I love that Bengals offense. I think it's like comically stacked. Now that their offensive line's real solid, they've got some unbelievable receivers, I think. Burrow's great, good running back. Yeah. Like, I really like the Bengals offense, so I'm a little torn.
We all know that Bateman's actually the #1 wide receiver in the North, right, Theo?
He's nice.
I do love Bateman. Yeah, I think with the Bengals, I guess my whole challenge is just do that again.
It's a tough one because what happened last year was like so like high end, like they got the breaks. Like, no disrespect, that's how it is when you make a Super Bowl, right? For every team ever. But then they also got, like, on paper, significantly better. Their offensive line way better. So how much of a like they any year you run it back, just the same team, you're probably not going to make the Super Bowl again. So where do you actually predict them to land in between,
I think they'll be about the same. I legitimately think the team will end around that 10-6, like that 9-8, 10-6, 11-5. Wait,
10-7,
9-8, 10-7, 11-6 type of range. Like, I think that the additions they made on the offensive line is good, but I don't think they'll be as healthy. I don't think the schedule will be as easy. I kind of think the way they played football relied so much on those explosive plays to chase, and I'm just not sure that they're going to be the #1 offense in that area again this year. Like, it's just we'll see. We'll see. I still don't really believe in Zach Taylor, and kind of the creativity of that offense was extremely low last year, and it was just kind of like line up and try to hit some go balls. And when we're under center, we're guaranteed to run it. So maybe he'll get more creative, but I think I don't necessarily think a coach that I think is mid is all of a sudden going to turn into like a creative genius. So
right. I think
that's kind of where
their additions on the offensive line are more like, if you stay the same, you got worse, right? Relative to the rest of the league, I think the additions of the offensive line helped them keep pace.
Well, they got better. They got better on paper. I think
they got better, but I think like when you look at like the other teams that also got better, I think like the Chargers got. I think the upgrades the Chargers made were more substantial, right? And I still think the Bills are a better team on paper. So like,
yeah, that's the thing, because it's like, do I think the Bengals are better than the Chargers right now, top to bottom? I don't think they're better than I think they very easily could win this division, but I don't know. I think that they'll be a wild card-ish type of team, and they weren't like this regular season juggernaut last year, right? Like that offense, it might look comically stacked, but I mean, they weren't like this. They weren't a top 10 offense last year for most of the season. They went on a tear in the last couple of weeks of the regular season, but I don't think that they were like this undeniably crazy efficient offense even last year. So this year they're going to maybe take a jump into that, but we'll see. We'll see.
So.
It was just kind of a weird year.
I'll predict that, yes, they do. I think that relying so much on the explosive plays would make sense for a team that had really a terrible, terrible offensive line. And now that you have a much more reasonable offensive line, I look at that offense, I think Burrow's a top 10 quarterback. I think that they've got some of the best receivers in the league. They've got a great running back. Like, yeah, I absolutely do think they're going to have one of the best offenses again this year. And maybe they won't have as many explosive plays, but I think also with an offensive line that's a lot more reasonably competitive in the NFL, they won't need as many. That would be my prediction for them. Now, are they going to be better than the Ravens in the regular season? Maybe not, but
right. I get, do it again. Like, Chidobe Awuzie also was truly like one of the best corners in football last year. Is that going to happen again? Trey Hendrickson had a sack in 11 straight games. Like, is that going to happen again? Like, it was just that those Chiefs games, like Mahomes just totally turned into a pumpkin. And I guess you can say that was just the defense locking him down. They had 4 interceptions off of they had 4 interceptions in the playoffs that came off batted balls at the line of scrimmage. It's like so many of those games came down to the last like play. It's like, damn, that just all kind of seems like a little fluky, and teams that lose the Super Bowl just never, ever like tend to, I guess the Patriots have done it in the past, but they're just not a safe team to bet on, like teams that lose the Super Bowl. So I get that you're right. Like, I agree, Matt. It's like that offense looks so good on paper, but at the same time, there's just a lot of indicators that they won't quite repeat what they did last year.
Here's what I'll say. Very rarely does an NFL team get worse on paper. I would say for the most part, most teams do not. And when you win the Super Bowl, it is very, very, very hard to get better on paper. And Blade and I agree. If you look the same, you probably got worse. I remember when the Panthers won the Super Bowl, immediately they lost both their starting cornerbacks and they were a disaster, and that was it, and they were just shot. This team, yes, they made the Super Bowl. Yes, Super Bowl hangover is a real thing, happens all the time. But the difference is that they weren't really supposed to be there yet. They were far exceeding expectations. And that means that they won the Super Bowl and then they went into free agency with like, how much money did they have? When does that happen? Almost never.
Yeah.
So I think there's such an outlier that I can't even judge them for being a Super Bowl team last year. I think the offense looks awesome. I think the defense maybe doesn't get everything it got last year, but I think it'll be pretty great again. I still like a lot of the guys that they've got. So I feel pretty good about them.
See, I don't think that's a bad
I'm
take
very
at all.
solidly on the over. I feel very confident about it.
It's 9.5, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
They will get
I definitely
10.
can see it. But I think the Ravens, to me, I'm super excited to watch them. I think for them to win, they remind me of the 2020 49ers when the 49ers lost Kittle and Jimmy G and Debo, and Nick Bosa tore his ACL, and they won like 5 games all year, 6 games all year, something like that. And then that's what this Ravens team reminds me of, like a team that was just really good. And then they lose Ronnie Stanley, Lamar, Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, like just a comical J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, just a comical amount of talent. And they can't blitz, which is all they like to do. And they can't run the football, which is all they like to do. So it just like their identity was gone last year and they still won 8 games. So you talk about being well coached. Like, I really hold Harbaugh in a really high regard. I hold Lamar in a really high regard. I absolutely think they can have better injury luck this year. And I mean, we're talking. And
their secondary is unbelievable. It is loaded.
Yeah.
If they can stay
Marlon
healthy,
Humphrey.
Marlon and Marcus Peters and Marcus Williams is an amazing deep safety with Kyle Hamilton in the box. Obviously, there was that video of him getting cooked on Twitter the other day, but
don't worry about it.
You know,
I'm not taking camp videos to heart.
About it.
That's never what he should be doing. Is lining wide, like guarding slot wide.
If Kyle Hamilton is ever like lined up in press man coverage, I am like, that's like no.
Yeah, it is what it is. So I think that he's going to be still a pretty good safety. And there's been more training camp clips of him doing a good job on more tight end bodies as well. So, and I think that defensive coordinator, obviously, I kind of disagreed with the decision to let Wink Martindale go. I thought he was a good coordinator, but the guy they got from Michigan totally turned that program's defense around and played with the Ravens or coached with the Ravens a long time. So defense should be good. I think they're going to be a top rushing attack in football again. Apparently, Lamar is looking very sharp as a passer. And at the beginning of last year, I thought he was passing the football just about better than he ever had too. So I totally buy that. I think Bateman's going to break out. I've got them winning this division. But yeah, the Bengals are right there. But there's just a lot to like about the Ravens too.
I like both these teams a lot.
Yeah, I think they'll. Yeah,
there's so many.
I'm higher on the Ravens than I am on the Bengals. But
my one question for the Ravens is the edge rushers. They don't have that guy. And granted, maybe they're not like some team that's relying on like a Myles Garrett per se or whatever, but you'd like to see them have maybe a little bit more pass rushing talent.
They've gotten it done with blitzes in the past and kind of creativity where they've been able to hold up on the back end because Jimmy Smith and Marlon Humphrey and like Marcus Peters were so good in man coverage that you could send a bunch of cover zero. And that's what Wink Martindale did. And when all the corners were gone, they just couldn't do that. But now the secondary is back, and I think they're going to be able to kind of almost Dolphins-esque be able to manufacture a lot of pressure because their secondary is so good and their coach is creative, I think. So I think I do worry about the front seven a little bit. Patrick Queen is not good. Their linebackers leave a little bit to be desired.
Josh Bynes has played for. I like Josh Bynes a decent amount. He has played forever, and I legitimately I saw
12.
Josh Bynes on a 2010 Auburn team that won the national title. He's the only other like serious draft pick on that team other than Cam. I saw Justin Houston on this depth chart, and I legitimately thought he was like 38 years old. He's 33, which is way younger than I thought. I don't know why I had it in my head that he was so old, but yeah.
Because he might as well be 38. He's been
and Calais Campbell, forever. I think, actually is legitimately 38 years old, although he's a beast.
Calais Campbell is very good.
Yes. So, yeah, I think I worry a little bit about that too. And I do worry a little bit about the efficiency of their passing game, just the way it has not been a super efficient passing game these last couple of years. And they lost Hollywood Brown. So there's reason to think like they won't be able to win games with a huge volume of passes. But I do think Lamar is a good enough quarterback to be better than he's been these last 2 years. And the rushing game should be up there with the Browns as the most efficient. So I like them a lot. Them and the Bengals, to me, are the two teams here. The Browns, if Watson, depending on Watson, like it's a 3-team race here. The Browns might have the highest ceiling, but they also have the least wiggle room, and that's kind of where I'm at there. The Bengals are going to have to stave off some regression in some areas, I think, and prove they're not a fluke. And then the Ravens just got to stay healthier, and I think they're the kind of safest bet to win this division. They project to regress positively because of the injuries. So,
right.
Yeah. And they've got tons of high level talent across the board. Ronnie Stanley didn't even make my top 100 players list, but he's got that potential. So yeah, that's just me talking for a long time.
Yeah. But I like the Ravens and Bengals over both.
I take the over on both of them, but that means I took the over on everyone. But like, the only reason I took the over on the Steelers was so that Steelers fans wouldn't get mad.
What do you actually think?
I feel like we've taken over on almost all of the teams. Like
I actually think I went under over today.
Yes, you did.
I was even. I think I maybe have a few more overs than unders, but I think I've kept it at least okay.
My goal for this season was to be a more positive analyst.
I think they're all going to.
So every team is going to be 10-6.
Everyone's going 10-6.
That's a good challenge. Maybe I'll tweet this from the Stay Hot account. Every team's over under. You have to pick 16 teams, half of them to hit the under, and see what people say.
Yeah, because that is a tough challenge.
That's a tough challenge because you're hating on a lot of teams in that case because everyone thinks they're hitting their over. Everyone thinks they're hitting their over.
I don't like that because a lot of it is like a lot of the teams that are going to hit the unders are like this team's going to have their quarterback get hurt. This team's going to be super injury prone.
But still,
I very much agree. I very much agree.
Exercise.
That's why I don't know if you like go through when you do your full team predictions with all the rankings or whatever and like actually map out each game. But if you don't and you just pick every team and you're just like, here's what I think their record will be. Here's what I'd like. I guarantee you'll end up with like 20 extra wins that can't possibly happen.
Last year, I did it in 4 chunks. I did it in quarter chunks. Like the first quarter of the season, I looked at the 4 teams they played, and I would say, I'm not going to go exactly WWLL exactly like they're going to lose this game, but like over that stretch, I'm feeling like a 2-2 over that stretch, I'm feeling a 3-1. I don't know where they dropped their game, but it's somewhere in there. And that's kind of how I did it. And after my record predictions last year, I was curious. So I added up all the wins, and it was exactly the amount of wins that I needed to be at.
That's
It was one of my
W.
proudest moments. And then I got the Bengals completely and horribly wrong, and the Seahawks completely and horribly wrong.
It's okay.
But I did get I think this year I'm being too positive. I think this year I'm
As an analyst, it's always beneficial to be a little bit too positive, I think.
Yeah. Trying to be happier for the people. But I made my prediction for I think it was the 49ers, and I said they would be like the 1 seed, and everyone got mad at me. And then I said the Colts would. The only one that I haven't gotten a lot of hate for is the Colts. I said the Colts would be like 10-7, and everyone's like, "Yay!"
Well, sometimes you got to realize when you get a TikTok, it's like if this got 20,000 likes, but then the top comment is disagreeing with me. I feel like that's just the nature of things, and it'll only have like 500 likes. So really, it's a lot more people agree with you. They're not just going to be like, "You're so right" in the comments, because why would you say that?
It was like common Bladen W.
Anyway,
But before we get out of here, we do have a chalkboard mailbag segment. And before we get into that, I want to remind everyone to go join our chalkboard chat. I'm wearing the chalkboard merch today.
hey,
Really representing the brand. If you guys want to submit questions of the week for us to read, suggest what we rank every week, or just talk with us about what's going on in the world of sports, Chalkboard is the place to do that. It's a great line of communication from us to our listeners so we can really help grow our community and build our podcast together. Plus, Chalkboard has a bunch of cool features like live box scores, so you can talk with us about a game while following along within the app. And by far the coolest feature is the live bet tracking, so you can see bets we and everyone in the group is making and how they perform. We love Chalkboard. We know you guys will too. So make sure you download the app and join the Stay Hot group, or just check out the links in our social bios and in the video description below. Today we're doing a chalkboard mailbag, just basically answering questions from the chalkboard. We have 2 of them. The first one is, would you rather build around Jamar Chase or Micah Parsons?
I think Micah
I'd say-
Parsons. I don't know. It's a tough one. You can't go.
It's a
wrong,
really
but
tough one, because I think the fact that the Bengals were the most explosive offense in football this year is actually crazy, considering they did not hit one explosive play last year. I was one of my big reasons why I didn't like them is because they were historically bad at hitting them. And then you just add Jamar Chase into the mix, and he's hitting them like every single week, every single week. So I think in terms of a pure win-loss perspective, Jamar Chase added more wins for the Bengals this year than Micah did for the Cowboys. So I think maybe I would say Chase, but I don't feel great about that. I ranked Micah Parsons higher on my top 100 list, and I think that he's maybe the better player right now. So maybe I'd say him as well. I guess Parsons is a little bit harder to find than an elite wide receiver, though.
That's my thought. But then here's so I was like, okay, well, I can find. There's a lot of good receivers, but how many guys like Parsons are there? Not many. But even there's a lot of good receivers. There's not a lot of receivers that like Chase, though. Even Chase is even on another level from the guys. So I'd probably still go Parsons. Maybe I don't. Receivers are cooler. Maybe I would go Chase.
The Cowboys just signed Anthony Barr, by the way. That just came down.
It's a good sign.
Solid move for them. Solid move.
I like
for them.
Anthony Barr.
He's an interesting player. I hope they don't try to make him an edge rusher, because Zimmer had his little heart set on doing that, and he never was any good at it. So we'll see.
He's super fast. So I understand the vision, but yeah.
His career high in sacks is 3.5 or something ridiculously low for the amount of times they tried to make him an edge rusher. But he's had some good seasons at linebackers. So
yeah. But as far as Jamar Chase or Micah Parsons goes, I'm taking Jamar. I love Micah Parsons. He's a phenomenal player, but I just think receivers are more valuable. Even if it's a little bit easier, I think if let's say, for example, you didn't have Joe Burrow at quarterback and you had Sam Darnold.
It wouldn't
Right,
matter
yeah.
what the hell you had at receiver then.
but like if you had a truly awful quarterback and you were like
Sam
you
Darnold.
knew that like Sam Darnold, would you rather have at that point where are you leaning? Are you leaning Jamar Chase? Because
I'm leaning. I mean, I guess that edge rushers are a little bit more responsible for their own success than wide receivers. It's really close. I think maybe I would say Parsons just because I think he's the better player by a little bit, but I don't know.
You can't go wrong
man.
here.
I'm going to say
can't go
Chase.
wrong.
I'm going to say
I'm gonna
Chase
go
just
Parsons.
because. Okay, fair. I'm
got
not
2
mad
for
at
Chase,
anything.
1 for Parsons, so you should take Chase. That's what the voting came out to. It seems like. The other question would be if you could lose 1 cent, what would it be? I assume
Smells so easily that it's not even funny.
Well, if you lose smell, does that also kind of nerf your taste?
Well, yeah,
No.
but then my other option would be taste, which certainly would nerf my taste.
If it was smell and taste, I think I might.
I think I'd still.
taste.
Would it be like hard to get food down then? Because then maybe, I don't know.
Losing your sense of taste, like
That'd be horrible. All of this would be
it's
horrible.
really bad. Like everything you
Okay,
eat
so
doesn't
what?
taste like
It's-
anything.
it's
It would be really good,
what?
easy to
Touch?
eat healthy though.
Touch, smell, sight, hearing. What am I forgetting?
I don't know. I think all of the options are pretty bad. I'd go smell and hope I can still taste things.
Was it
Yeah.
touch?
I think that.
smell,
I think to
taste,
make this even a
sight?
question,
Okay.
you're listing them off. Just like observe the world around you. And okay, I can hear things,
What would
smell
I-
things, see things, taste things, and feel things. There you go. What can I do? What can I do?
What are my options?
What are my options here? I can see.
You
here.
just
What do I-
spawned on Earth. You're like, what am I capable of?
what am I capable
which
of right
game
now?
What game mode am I in? Is this
That's so
adventure
funny.
mode?
What are my abilities here?
What am I doing here?
I would say hearing is the only other. I don't want to not be able to feel things just because that's legitimately dangerous if you're like feeling pain.
I don't even know how that would work specifically.
I
like
don't.
what
I got to be able to touch things and
Yeah,
like
you have to be able
register that I'm feeling something. I have to be able to see things.
I need to be able to.
Hearing is like third on that list, and then smell and taste is.
I think
fourth,
touch
if
is
we're
number
keeping-
1. Obviously, you need touch, right? Touch is number 1. I think hearing's number 2 for me. I think I would rather be able to hear than see.
I'm running laps
disagree.
around you in any sport if that's the case. We're,
I don't know.
walking down the
Okay,
I
but
have
street.
no
like-
idea. I think this is a
It's
hard
like-
question.
Deaf would
I'm
be
going
better than
smell.
Yeah.
And
Being
smell,
deaf is way better than being blind. Like any day. Give me being deaf and sight and having sight over being
smell
blind and
arguably
hearing.
would be good sometimes. There's at least sometimes where, if something's stinky, you won't smell it. That's not so bad.
But if you lose smell, you're gonna lose taste, or it's at least gonna be very, very negated.
Okay, well, still, that's like all of these options are not great, but you won't smell stinky things.
Yeah.
With smell.
Yeah,
and
I guess-
not as bad as
I
sight or
guess
hearing.
you
I
take
like to
away
think.
smell.
Maybe I don't know, but that's
The
what I'm
only
going.
thing is like if your house starts to fill up with like poisonous gas, you're fucked.
I guess.
Like if you if you have
I
a
won't let
gas
that
stove
happen.
and you forget
Don't
to turn
worry.
it off, and you won't smell it, and it's just
I have
like
an
you're
electric
cooked.
stove, actually. Not
would
going to
need-
happen to me. So I'm all good. But you are right. You are right. That is a dangerous thing, but okay.
All right. Well, I think we're all leaning smell though, but that pretty much wraps things up for us. As always, tons and tons of content coming away on all platforms. We'll be back. I think I have a live stream on Saturday, and then we have another podcast coming out, of course, on Monday. So yeah, as always, from Corn Boy, Bird Boy, and Lemon Boy, we will catch you all on the flippity flop.